Hey, welcome back to the Panda Award Show. My name's Ben. I'm joined here by Abby.
Hey,
And
how are you?
good, man. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. Excited for us to record this next episode.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about something you're the expert on yourself.
I can only hope so.
It said either you or if you have a therapist, maybe they might be, maybe your wife. We'll put her at a ranking. Do you think you know yourself better than your wife does? Or
We met a little later in my life, so she's missing out on some core details here and there.
okay, so she's going to get filled in on this
Yeah,
podcast today.
exactly. She's gonna be like, "So this is why you're such a nerd." Okay.
Yeah, and I think, just trying to draw back the reason, one of the things that we wanted to do early on, it's weird talking about ourselves, but we're also asking other people to do it. So we
Exactly.
thought it was appropriate to go ahead and put ourselves out there in the way that we're asking other people to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I think it kind of centers around a lot of what we're talking about on the podcast is, trying to position yourself so that way you can further your own career. You can't ask something of your boss that you might not understand yourself, or when you're working with a client or a customer, you need to be able to put yourselves in their shoes in order to get the job done,
Yeah.
or just ask the right questions.
Well, let's dig in here. So, what was kind of your spark around tech, or maybe just a little bit about your childhood, and then kind of how you found tech in your world?
Yeah, so it was the day I was born. I came out with a keyboard.
Was it an IBM mechanical keyboard, or type of a Model M? Or
I still have that on my wish list. It's the old IBM proper spring loaded keyboard.
well, those go
Forget the
for a
name.
lot of money.
Yeah, one day. No, so for me, I've had a few sparks in my life that kind of made me gravitate towards technology. I don't think there was ever one in the beginning that I can put a really strong memory on. I have core memories of hearing a dial-up modem, of trying to figure out, okay, we're using the AOL CD this month, the Bell South CD the next month, the Earthlink CD the next month,
Did
right?
you get
Like,
did you get on Net Zero?
yeah, we did one time, right? And I still have insane nostalgia for a lot of stuff that we grew up with that made our careers happen. But I think the really big thing, in elementary school, there was some stuff we just worked with technology. I knew how to operate the tech. The projectors were just coming out into classrooms. The TVs were starting to become flat screens. This and that, right? There were some changes in elementary school, but I think the number one biggest thing was in middle school. Then it was seventh grade, and I ended up going to this technology middle school called Don Estridge High Tech Middle School. It's in South Florida, named after Don Estridge, the father of the modern PC. So pretty cool. It was old. It was IBM actually gave their old foundry, not foundry. They had a tech campus in Boca Raton, Florida, and they donated it to the school district and turned it into a middle school. So kind of cool.
That's cool.
But yeah, so back then they stuck us all into this class. They stuck us into like how to use Office, and myself along with like three or four other kids were just like, we already know how to use Office. Like we're nerds. Come on, like we used Office in sixth grade. We don't need to learn how to use it in seventh grade. And so somehow we actually convinced the teacher, like we're way beyond this. Like we're showing them how to do stuff. We're showing them how we do actually have the knowledge of how to use PowerPoint, Word, Excel, because we were just kind of tinkering intuitive kids at the time, right? As kids are kind of sponges. And
I
so we convinced the teachers in the school to let us do something more technical. And their solution was to start a PC support class that was typically only in the high school level, where you have an actual like teacher classroom thing. But what they ended up doing with us is they put us with the sysadmin that was at the school, and they essentially got tickets throughout the day, and we did those tickets. That's how we learned. So like in seventh grade, I was imaging computers with Alteris. I was connecting printers and Like I learned how to install toner. I learned the entire process of how a printer works, learning how to install network printers on a pretty decently sized Active Directory domain. And we were fixing hardware. Like at some point, we're like, oh, these computers need upgraded. Okay, well, here's a stack of RAM or like one of those not crate, like a container of RAM. I forget what they call, right? When you have like 50 RAM sticks in one box. And we went around to classroom and after hours or during breaks, and we installed RAM. It was simple stuff, right? And it's really interesting looking back on that because I made a lot of friends at that school, a lot of friends that are also pretty nerdy in their own ways. And, I think I'm one of the few people that actually went into an IT career. Everyone else went into something else tech related, whether it be like computer science, computer engineering, you know, uh, all kinds of different things. A few became doctors. I think one of them is actually a very well known pediatric cardiologist in a certain part of the country.
That's quite the pivot.
Yeah, like great. Like, 'cause, like there were some smart kids I was working with. But yeah, that was kind of the big thing that pushed me into tech. And I continued doing that in high school in like an actual PC support academy course. I got my A plus certification in 11th grade and just kind of continued doing tech. It just seemed like a lot of fun, but it wasn't originally intended to be my career. I wanted to go into computer engineering, but that was difficult.
What did you want to do in computer engineering? What did you picture that job being like when you were thinking about it?
I wanted to design and work on circuit boards. I wanted to not necessarily program the system that's using, but like when a new device comes out, you got to create a circuit board and you got to figure out all the pathways. And I wanted to do that. Like I thought
Yeah.
that was really cool. Like I learned to solder when I was like 10 years old. I thought it was cool, like awesome. But that never came to fruition. Apparently calculus and me don't go get along.
So we've gone through middle school. We have our A plus. How did you enter the job market? What did that look like?
So originally, the A plus exam, I got it just because it was part of the coursework. I wasn't expecting it to do anything with it. And that was in 11th grade. I first used that certification 3 or 4 years later. I just wanted a part-time job. I knew I was good at technology. So I was like, oh, well, I live pretty close to a Best Buy. Like maybe I can just work for Geek Squad. It seemed cool. It seemed like the right thing to do, or the right choice.
Yeah.
And so I applied for a job. I got an interview. I went to the interview, forgot my wallet at home. Luckily, I didn't need it. And they saw on my resume, the interviewer, that I had an A plus certification. And they're like, "Oh, you have an A plus certification. That's awesome. Like you'll be a great fit here." And the rest of the interview was nothing to do with technology. It was just chatting and talking about what I like to do and just getting a vibe for myself, I guess. Now, as someone who is on hiring committees and has worked in interviewing people, uh, I knew exactly that was just like, okay, for this job level, A plus, we can already know this person has the general knowledge we need. Now let's just see if they're a good fit. And I got the job. I was not a good fit, but I got the job.
How old would you say the person interviewing you was? Were they similar age? Were they a lot older?
No, they were a manager for the store, probably in their. I mean, back then I was a 19-year-old kid, so that
Gotcha.
guy looked 40 or 50 at the time, but he was probably in his late 30s. Pretty
Okay.
close to the age we are
Yeah.
now.
And so that was the store manager would actually interview and pick the Geek Squad employees as well. It wasn't like its own thing necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at the time, I don't know if they've changed, and this was quite a while ago, but there was no Geek Squad manager. The store manager oversaw Geek Squad, and then Geek Squad had a team lead or a service lead of some kind. And so we did an interview with that because that service lead didn't have any hiring authority within the corporate structure. So it fell onto man. But it was a interesting job. I learned a lot. Tech wise, I didn't learn too much, but what I did learn was how to interact with people because customers are coming in, working in a city that's known to have kind of strong-willed people. And it was a lot of learning how to deal with that struggle or that difficult part. Someone comes in, they expect their system to work, they expect you to know everything about their computer. This is the first time you're hearing about it. You don't know what's going on yet, but you say it all with a smile and you work and you talk, you have a conversation, you learn about the system, and there you go. You're able to fix the computer or take it in and ship it off to the next technician that has more knowledge than you.
Yeah, where would that handoff normally be? Where you guys kind of just like is it an amount of time? Is it a certain issue type, or when did you guys hand off to the depot at that time?
At Geek Squad, it was based on the work that was needed. So we didn't do any hardware repairs in the store. The store only performed software things. So we can run an antivirus, we can run backups, reinstall your OS, install some applications, things like that. Anything hardware, unless it's installing a device you purchased in the store, we shipped off to a depot. We had like memory and fans and the simple stuff in stock, as far as I remember. And if we determined that the RAM was bad, either by running memtest or swapping the RAM and it fixes all the problems, we would tell them, hey, your memory's bad. And we wouldn't like say you can buy it. We'd be like, you need this, it's X amount of monies. Usually we'd call them up, be like, it's going to cost you this amount to fix so and so. And they'll be like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Or no, never mind. And then if they say yes, you fix the computer, you install a new memory, the new components. If they say no, you return it back to the way you found it and give it to outtake, whatever the opposite of intake would be.
Sure. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot of virus removal and a lot of, like you said, a lot of software based stuff. Were people generally okay to deal with? And something that I learned early in my career is you have to separate someone's anger towards the problem versus their anger towards you. Did you have a lot of those along the way?
A lot of angry customers, especially when let's say they're sold a new computer and then they install an application wrong, it bricks the computer essentially. They're not they don't realize or understand that it's their fault, and you can't tell them it's their fault. So they come back 2 days after buying a new computer, and they're complaining that it's slow or this or that. And there was tons of reason as to why it's slow. Either they installed an application that they shouldn't have. They were sold like I think at the time, at that time we were on. It was before Core I think the core processors. I think it was like Core 2 Duo or something. They were sold
Yeah.
a Pentium or a Celeron instead of needing a Core 2 Quad or whatever it was. That type of stuff. And that also, it was like learning to how to talk to people to understand what they need because they have no idea about technology. That's your job as the expert. You need to translate their desires into what is the best solution for them. And that includes not underserving them and giving them, like at this point, giving them an i3 when they need an i7, but also don't give them an i9 because no one besides gaming and specific people need that, right? Like bring them down to what's a good fit for them. And going back to what you actually asked me, that was kind of the difficulty. It was as a pretty young, pretty arrogant kid, being able to talk to customers that were not having a good day and trying to be nice to them. And if I often made jokes or cracked, it was kind of a wisecrack, and those jokes don't translate very well.
Was Geek Squad giving you like a script for any of this? Like, this is how we want you to talk to the customer, or did they just
No,
interact when there
no, I
was a
don't remember
problem?
any of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no recollection of being told what to do. It was just like, take it in, fill out the form that has like their name, their password. Back then, it was like, what's your password? Write it down on this piece of paper, right? And we'll type it up into the system. Which again, like even nowadays, I think that's still going to happen if you're dealing with a residential customer. Like they're gonna have to give you their password. Yeah. But yeah, it was like filling out that form and taking down the problem, like writing down like what their experience is, what the symptoms are, and then we'll take that and say, okay, well, we'll diagnose it and figure it out.
Yeah. You were working at Geek Squad a bit, and maybe you weren't the best fit. Did you leave that job on your own? Did they
No,
say it was time to
I did
part
not.
ways?
I did not leave that job on my own. I don't remember why. I may have technically left it on my own. Something went wrong. Either I did something wrong or I got in trouble for doing something mundane. I don't really know. But after around 6 months, I left and I got a job at a competing retail organization, H.H. Gregg.
I haven't heard that name in a second.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Did they have their version of Geek Squad, or are you doing more of a sales position there?
I entered the job in sales. It was like electronic sales. So we spent a few weeks learning about fridges and appliances, but also TVs and computers and cameras and all that. And as someone that was into computers, I was terrible at selling you a fridge. But let me tell you, I could sell you a laptop. I know exactly which one you need. And actually, all of my coworkers handed those people to me, which I loved. What I didn't realize is that a computer has like a $2 margin, whereas a fridge has a like 50% margin.
Wow.
I made no money. I made absolutely no money working there, but it was my first foray into sales, and I was still arrogant. I was still naive. I was still not someone that should be in sales. But I did learn a lot of like how to talk to people and to learn what they need so you can position them into the right spot. But I was terrible at upselling warranties. Not, you know.
Are you sure you don't want the additional year warranty, even though the manufacturer includes a year?
On an HDMI cable too.
Yeah, how about a $18 warranty for this $20 HDMI cable?
Oh no, we sold like $120 HDMI cables. Yeah,
Did you
they
have the
were.
monster cables? You had the monster
We
cables
did.
too.
They were gold plated, oxygen infused. They had ruby red slippers. I mean, they were the bee's knees of cables.
Yeah. I take it you didn't stay at H.H. Gregg forever. What did that look like?
So I think actually before I had my job at Geek Squad, because that was my first like real tech job where I was doing
Yeah.
tech work, right? Before that, when I was living on campus at Florida Atlantic University, I got a job at Living Room Theaters. It was Living Room Theaters is still around. They're a movie theater restaurant combination kind of company.
Did you say restaurant?
Yeah, yeah. So they have a restaurant in the front of the building and movie theater in the back.
Okay.
And they primarily show independent and foreign films, not feature films that you typically find at your general stores. They just built this building on campus, and this company was going to run it at night. During the day, it was used for the theater department and the film department. The theaters were classrooms. And then at night, it was run as a movie theater and a restaurant. But in the beginning, I was helping them with their projectors and their sound systems and all the technology that goes into operating a movie theater in general. And we had 5 or 6 theaters. I forget exactly how many, but it was really cool to do that. And eventually, I left that because I wasn't living on campus and I didn't have a car.
Sure.
And then that's when Best Buy was closer. And then when I left Best Buy, I went to H.H. Gregg. I also got fired from there. And I didn't have a job for a few months. And then I got a call from a friend of mine, a mentor, really. And he's like, "Hey, do you want an internship?" I was like, "Sure. Yeah, what is it?" And that's when I ended up working for the school district of Palm Beach County in a temporary capacity. And that was a lot of fun. That's when I first really learned what systems administration was actually about in a proper environment where I had a manager and a team lead and a team and everything that goes into that.
Yeah. What did that interview look like?
It didn't. The guy already knew who I was, so that I don't remember that interview at all because it was friendly. It was very friendly, but I think it mostly centered around like, what do you know? What do you like? What do you do? My task for that internship, and this is why the interview didn't really matter so much. It was to work on, we had two things. One was to work on application packages for scripting and application packages for our RMM that we were using, which was LandDesk, before Avanti bought it. And yeah, I don't know why everyone hates LandDesk that I talk to, but I love it. It was just like, as a kid, I think I was like, this is great. And now I think as a seasoned professional, I'm like, I don't know, but I haven't used it in a decade. So, and then the other task, which was probably the bulk of my internship, was cataloging our entire inventory of computers for the entire school district in order to submit it for a grant to get a 1-to-1 ratio of computers for the school district for students. So I had to catalog 75-ish thousand computers.
Wow.
Yeah, and we had 200-ish thousand students. I think it was like 180 at the time, 180,000 students. We currently had 75,000 computers, and the goal was to get a grant to enable the purchase of the extra like 100,000 computers we needed.
Now, did these have barcode asset tags or anything like that, or was this all manual? Or
Everything was barcoded, but everything was also attached to Active Directory. The only
I
thing
see.
is that it was, from my understanding, I never could get access to like be able to run everything at once. It was like I had to go to each school and look at their directory tree and go to whatever OU I knew that it was in, because it was organized very well. It was like, here's the teachers, here's the staff, here's the faculty, the staff, the students, right? And so I had to go to every single school and look at every single OU and extract the computers from that OU. And it was cool to be able to see, like, to be part of a project to, acquire 100,000 computers or whatever it was, being part of that data acquisition or the data gathering side of it, figuring it out and being able to submit that to my bosses.
Was that kind of your sole task there? Like when the audit was done, were you done, or what did that
Kind of,
turn into?
yeah. So that was because it was an internship. Like I had a few things. I was a few times I did create application installation packages for LandDesks. Pretty much everything was Dell, but we may have had like 4 or 5 generations of Dells, because if you're installing computers every year, you're not replacing them every year, right? So, um, your firmware might be different, your BIOS chip are different, certain drivers might be different. And at the time, we still had Windows XP, we still had Vista, we still had 7, all running concurrently. Applications couldn't just be installed on a whim. After that like task was done, and this was timed where it was like September through December, my internship was over. That department, because I was working at like the headquarters of the school district, they didn't have a position open for me. Because I was already in the system as a school district employee, I had an easier time applying for jobs at schools to become the school sysadmin. And that was the leap to start doing sysadmin work. So I got a job working at an elementary school. I worked there for 6 months because it was the second half of the year, and then I switched to a different school after that. So I started in December, finished in like June or July, and then moved to a different school for July to that school year. But it was cool. I got to learn a lot about managing your own tech stack. And this is one thing I loved about my journey, is like I was slowly just doing more and more and more, like these little tiny incremental steps. Now I'm having to manage just a few hundred computers instead of 50,000 computers. I remember one fun thing I did was, it was a mail merge. The simplest thing in the world. It was just, we had to print awards for 5th grade because they were graduating, right? This was a fun thing to do, a nice thing to do for the kids. And someone was like, okay, we'll type up all the awards. I was like, what do you mean you're going to type them up? Like, no. And so because I was like the liaison between different departments, I was able to go to the the person who was in charge of attendance, and be like, hey, I need a record of all of the students in 5th grade. And they could give me a CSV of all the students in 5th grade. And it shows me their name and their teacher. That's like, great. And then I can do a find and replace for the teacher names to be proper teacher name instead of just like last name only. I can do a case replacement on all the student names because the whole list was full caps only. And I was able to generate like 150 awards in an hour of dealing with people and coordinating that versus a week of manual entry or having every teacher make their own, right?
I wonder if there's schools still doing that today, like manually typing them out.
I think a lot of it's more automated because that district moved to become a Google Apps pilot project. And now they're a Google Workspace for education environment fully.
Oh, do you move around positions there, or do you have this role for a bit and then you decide it's time for something new?
I was at one school for 6 months and I was at another school for 1 year. I was fast paced. Like I wanted to do things more, right? In 4 years, I had 6 jobs. Well, I wanted to do more. I wanted something more technical because I was actually applying to higher jobs in the school district, but I was never getting them. And I was getting really frustrated with why I wasn't getting them. And I had friends going for the same position because you end up being friends with other technicians in the schools, and they always got them, and they were always older than me. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm just too young. I should go do something else. I don't know if that was true, but that's what I saw. And so I ended up applying for a job with Comcast, AT&T, and other telcos. I ended up getting a job with AT&T. I noticed in an email that the guy's signature said he's the recruiter for Florida, not South Florida where I was living, all of Florida. So I was like, So I just emailed be like, hey, do you do all of Florida? Like, are there any positions open in Orlando? And he's like, yeah, there are. Do you want it? I was like, yes.
Why Orlando?
I don't know. At the time, I really don't know why. I think I just wanted to move to where I could do some more fun stuff. I had a friend that lived up here. I'm in Orlando now, and he was doing cool things, and I wasn't doing anything fun in South Florida. So I think I just was gravitated towards wanting to do something more entertaining. Did 6 weeks of training here in Orlando. Ended up getting the job. It was like, I think at week 6, you have to take a test. If you fail the test, you get fired. If you pass the test, you move on to weeks 7, 8, and 9 of training. I don't remember, but I do know for a fact if you fail the exam, you were let go.
What are you doing there? Are you in the call center? Are you installing service?
I was a wire technician, so I was installing service in residential and some businesses. We would take the circuit from the start, which was the AT&T side, make sure it's wired from the main in the crossbox, so going from like the primary trunk for AT&T's network down to the individual wires for an entire neighborhood. Take the circuit from there up. It might be up like a telephone pole, put a ladder up a telephone pole, bring the wire down to the house, put in a box on the side of the house for the demarc, and then run the inside wire to install the cable to wherever the customer wants within reason.
And was that DSL at that time, or had they transitioned to fiber?
It was VDSL, and we had fiber. Our region or our service area within our like Central Florida region didn't have fiber. New construction had it. They were typically only giving it to like the higher techs. So I was like a level 1 wire tech. Level 2 and 3 people, they were able to do fiber. And I left AT&T the month I was supposed to be trained on fiber termination.
Did you already have something lined up, or you're just like, I'm not going to climb ladders anymore?
Well, a little bit of both, right? But I had a work order with AT&T, had a site, and it turns out it was next door to an MSP, a managed service provider. I didn't know what an MSP was. I didn't know the term, but it just said they did technology. And so I walked in the door after I finished my work order, and I was just like, hey, like, I do technology. What do you guys do? They're like, we're not really hiring right now, but we'll like take your resume. I had a short conversation with the VP of the company. It was a small company, so there's only 2 or 3 people in the building. And like a week or two goes by, and they had to let go. They had to let go of somebody, and then they called me up. Hey, we need someone to fill this position. Are you available? And I was like, I can start in like 2 weeks because I currently have a job. Something went down at AT&T, and I was going to get in trouble. And I told my boss at the time, I was like, hey, it was not my fault. That's where. And he agreed. And then something else happened. I was like, oh, that is my fault. I messed up. I'm sorry. I would never want to do that. I like completely did a job wrong. So I was like, hey, instead of writing me up, what if I just quit? He's like, all right. Cause I was like, I already have a position like available. I was planning on telling you about it. This is just a coincidence. And maybe that's why I didn't do well in that work order or that service order. Cause I may have had other things on my mind. And again, I was still young. I was a young kid, right? I did not know what I was doing in my life. But this small MSP took the risk on me. They brought me on, and I stayed there for a couple of years. And I learned a lot.
Now, what did that onboarding process look like? Were you just like cast out into the fire? Did they let you shadow anybody? Was there any documentation at all?
Back then, no, nothing. Don't read. I don't. I'm not going to throw them under the bus. At the same time, they don't exist anymore. At the time, there wasn't too much documentation. Like we didn't have IT glue when I started. I think we used IT glue like 6 months later.
Yeah.
Started with it. But my first thing was to work with one client. I was dedicated to that client for a certain period of time, and that was how I learned how to like deal with people that are using technology for business rather than for education. And so it was a lot of that, but it was a lot of not knowing what's there and just figuring it out because
Yeah.
documentation is really hard, especially when at the time you didn't have good documentation tools. It was just here's a notebook, here's a a
Yeah.
PDF or
If I had to guess, you probably had some credentials documented, maybe some IPs or like servers, but you probably didn't have actual processes documented, if I had to
yeah,
guess, or very rare if they were.
exactly. Yeah. And I think a lot of this happens a lot at some MSPs. It's even password managers at the time were kind of new. They weren't that popular. So what do you do when you don't have a password manager? Name password. Literally, we had like one password for every client.
Yeah.
And they changed that eventually. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, this is not. It also didn't seem bad. It was just like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. We don't have any other way to do it. Just like back in the day, right? The first ever password, it wasn't really a password. It was just, how do I make sure no one touches my stuff?
So, you're transitioning from education and retail. What immediately stood out about working with businesses versus, the general public and education?
In education, one thing that, especially at the elementary school level, it's kind of just like herding sheep, sometimes like herding cats, right? A lot of the job is psychological in nature. It's dealing with little tiny humans. Whereas on the business side, it is like, I need this to work because if I don't have it working, I'm not making money. And if I'm not making money, I'm losing money. You're like, shit, okay. I need to, this is really important. Like the CEO of this company is demanding that something's working. It's like, okay. As a younger kid too, you're kind of scared of that. You're like, okay, yeah, let me, let me help you. Let me figure it out. Let me try to understand what's going on. And you will do whatever it takes to get the job done because you don't really have any other choice.
Now, as you're navigating this, can you think back and remember any mistakes you made early on? Like, did you delete someone's contacts or anything like that as you were learning?
So many mistakes. Things like not screwing in a VGA cable, those things are loose. Also why I hate HDMI. DisplayPort all day, baby. Not anymore, right? USB-C better now. Anyways, you didn't back up this person's desktop before you reset their computer. Cool. The one big mistake I made at one point, this was after I was working at MSP when I went internal for a while. I was changing a domain for emails for like a sub department, and somehow I deleted their mailbox,
Oof.
and then I deleted the backup. And so I literally had to go to this like employee. I was like, I screwed up. All your emails are gone. everything's gone. Luckily, they didn't really care because they didn't work in the email that much. They were doing other things.
Yeah, it'd be relieving, honestly. Like, if you want to do inbox zero, the IT guy deleted my email. So if you want anything done, you better email me again because I'm not going to get to it.
Yeah, I mean, luckily it wasn't the person that was working there for like 7 years, right? It was the employee there for like just 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
But it was stupid things like that. It was not doing the right thing because you just didn't have the experience or understanding of what the right thing actually is. And like you said, not having those processes in place, it's way too easy to make a mistake.
You brought, or they brought, a documentation system in house. Did people actually use it? Be honest. Were people making processes in it,
Yeah,
or
no, we used it, but at the same time, there were only two of us. So, I mean, there was the owner of the company, but he wasn't in IT school all that much. It was just me and the VP of the company. So, yeah, we were using it because we're the ones that wanted it.
yeah. How did you guys prioritize that when you were early on, like figuring out what you wanted to document? Was it just you'd run across something, or was there a specific effort to document certain things?
This was a while back. I'm trying to remember, but I think it was a lot of just as it comes up, documented. Like, when we do this cleanup on this
Just in
client,
time
or
documentation. I've heard it
yeah,
referred to as before.
yeah, yeah. Toyota would be so proud.
Very cool. So we're at the MSP. We made a couple mistakes, but we're coming along. We were starting to document things. What else did you get kind of out of this MSP life? Did you have different titles or roles? Did you wear different hats along the way?
No, I was there for just 2 years. At the beginning, I don't think I even had a role. I think when I asked for a role, my boss was like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I need a title." He's like, "What do you want it to be?" You tell me. And I think I made myself like chief technology officer, which very much was not.
Man,
I
yeah,
was IT technician number one.
I feel like that's something that can just possibly happen in the MSP world. Is sometimes there's some title bloat.
Yeah, yeah. Even today, right? Like, I don't know what to call myself. I'm just the guy that helps with computers. You know?
Check
Everybody-
signer.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of different positions. I was only there for 2 years. It was a small company. At some point, I was in charge of like one kid. I say kid, he was like 4 years younger than me. There wasn't a lot of like leadership per se. We have a job to do. It was at the time, like most MSPs, even today, was very reactive versus proactive. And so we weren't doing planning. VCIOs weren't a thing. Like that term hadn't been coined yet. And if it had, it was like in some niche market that no one talks about or no one knows exists. It's like super niche. So yeah, we were just doing the thing that most IT companies did. You have a problem, we fix it. Close the ticket. Move on to the next ticket. That's about it. One thing I did like when I was centered at that client of ours, a few days a week, it was being able to just walk around and talk to people and just, you know, drive by administrating. And so then you notice people are like, you need a new mouse because I noticed that it's falling apart. You keep clicking down at the taskbar. Alt tab exists. Time to teach people what that it's like that XKCD comic. You're just 10,000 people learn something new every day. And if you do 10,000 people every day, you will never teach in all of humanity because there's more than 10,000 people born every day or some bizarre thing like that. That might be off by a magnitude of order of magnitude, but I'll do the math there.
Do you feel like you picked up different technical skills, or did you kind of get to 2 years? Were you at a burnout point, or were you just ready for the next move, or did something come to you?
I did learn a lot. It was, I learned SonicWall, and I learned Unify, and I learned Sophos, and I learned, Microsoft and Google, and Windows and Mac, and this and that, right? The one thing I loved about MSP life is that you have access to so much stuff. It is the entirety of every technology in existence all at once, and you have to know all of it. I learned a lot about like being able to pick up knowledge really quickly in order to solve a problem because you're not going to know everything that comes through the door. You're going to have to figure it out. And that was, I've always wanted to figure it out. I was always a like a go-getter or whatever you want to call it, but I was never in a position where it was like truly figure it out or we don't make money.
Right.
That's a whole nother ball game.
You pick up those skills. Are you kind of burn out at that point, or how does that transition happen?
I wouldn't say I was burned out necessarily. I just wanted something different, and I was applying for other jobs. Turns out I ended up becoming internal IT for a small business. I ended up becoming like their director of technology. And ended up becoming the last job that I ever had.
Yeah. When you go internal IT, how was that transition from managing a bunch of different companies to one? Did you enjoy getting to focus in a little bit more on one company? Did you get
Yes.
bored?
One thing I loved really well is like having control over the entire environment.
Yeah.
It's like I'm the one that was in charge of what we needed and what we could do. It's like, okay, we had a Sophos. Great. Sophos. I like Sophos. Ended up switching to a different vendor because they just wanted something different, or there was a good reason at the time. But it's like, okay, well, I get to choose what vendor and I get to choose what we're going to do because I'm the one in charge of the environment. I'm not listening to someone else necessarily. Like my expertise was given to the CEO or the owner of the company and be like, hey, this is what we need. And they're like, okay, you've made your case.
And
Let's
what
do it.
did that approval process look like? So when I was in internal, for example, we kind of did a comparison. I was like, hey, here's the alternatives. Here's the one that I recommend, and here's why. Was there something similar to that there, or did they kind of take your recommendation at face value?
It was both. So I myself pick 3 to 5 vendors that I can hear about, learn about, figure it out, peer reviews, white papers, demo the product, all that stuff. Come up with the reasoning behind it. I would make that into a report and be like, I recommend we do this because of what I've just figured out. And they'd be like, okay, cool. Because I've already done the work. They're not going to do the work because they have no reason to. I'm the person that's dealing with the tech. As a small business, you have an approval process, but at the same time, you kind of don't. It's kind of wishy washy because you've gained the trust of the person that is in charge. And so the owner of the company, if you can gain their trust, they're going to trust that you made the right decision and aren't trying to screw them over.
Did you have any big challenges while you're internal IT, or did you feel pretty comfortable in that role?
I felt comfortable. I also felt overwhelmed because I went from just technology to technology plus budgeting and forecasting and everything, everything to do with the entire IT department. And, I suffice to say, I liked it enough, like they're like, you need to make an IT budget so we know what we're spending and you can tell us what it is. And I wasn't the one controlling the budget, but I was like, this is what we should have. And they use that to influence the spend of the company.
Uh,
But I was like, okay, let me make a really pretty spreadsheet. And I made a very pretty spreadsheet and they liked it. And I was like, great. I'm going to use this for the next 10 years.
And I feel like that's something that is overlooked when, a sysadmin or someone looks at those IT manager, IT director jobs. Is a lot of times you may be doing stuff that's not just turning the riches. You're setting the budget. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot of office politics, depending on the office. And
Yeah. Yeah. And, this kind of dives into my current role too. So I was at this internal job for 7 years, the longest job I've ever had. So it's kind of fortuitous, if that's the right word, that the
yeah,
last U2 employment that I've ever had so far, at least, hopefully ever, is also the longest relationship I've ever had in a professional setting. I was still an arrogant ass. I did not get along with the CEO of the company. And it was literally like, you aren't very nice. You aren't doing good things. You aren't this and that. Like we don't appreciate the way that you're handling these things. And that happened to me quite a number of times. There have been a number of instances in my life where I wanted something and I couldn't get it because the person that controlled that didn't like me, or I was mean in a sense or something, right? I rubbed someone the wrong way. And so I quickly learned, now being internal, I learned to read body language and read the room better and understand the nuances of human nature to become a better, nicer, more empathetic person. And I've always been a nice guy, but at the same time, like, I was a smart kid. I was a wise ass, a smart wise ass.
If I may ask, there's probably someone out there listening that was or is still that person. They're very smart and intelligent, but for some reason people don't like them sometimes. How did you kind of figure out, how you needed to change your communication style and things like that to, mesh better in those situations?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things that helped me was being put in my place by people in power. It was, having a crush on a girl and her mom saying, "You're a dick." It's humbling in a way. It really tells you, like, it puts you in your, it makes you understand what matters to get the thing you need. And because that happened, I learned more and more how to understand what people want and put myself in their shoes to understand what they're asking from their perspective. They don't they don't care that I'm cracking the joke. It's that I'm cracking the joke at the wrong time. Or when they say something's not working and I was like, "Oh, it's no problem. I can fix that." No, it is a really big problem because from their perspective, it is a work stoppage, right? Or it is the one thing that is stopping them from finishing a project, whatever it might be, right? It's like if you run out of toilet paper when you're in the bathroom. It's really frustrating. It might not be the end of the world, but when that happens, you're like, it's really difficult to get through that situation.
I wish I would have stored the extra rolls there. Now I'm
Yeah.
in this situation.
And half the time, it's your fault. You already noticed that you're running low on rolls. You could have put them in there.
Yep.
You chose not to.
You didn't have N+1 toilet paper, and
Always have
now
N
you're
plus
in
one.
a crappy
Always.
situation.
But yeah, it was things like that. It was just putting the other person's mindset in perspective. So that way you can just truly understand why the mundane problem is a really big deal. Keyboard shortcuts and how to do macros and fun things as a kid, I figured everybody would know them because as a kid, you learn how to tell time. Who can't read a clock? You learn how to do math. Who doesn't know how to do multiplication? You're like, everyone knows this. And then as I matured and as I learned, I realized that those are not normal skills that everyone has. And if you're in a position today where you know that you're freaking smart, and by all means own that. If you're smart, you don't have to humble yourself all the time. Be the smart person. But you have to understand that not everybody is smart in the same way that you are. If you and I, Ben, like, we have really different skill sets. Like, you can walk circles around me when it comes to automation, right? But I think I'm probably better at running a business than you are today. That doesn't mean that either of us are incapable of doing each other's tasks. It's just we haven't learned that skill yet. And that's the one thing that I constantly had to learn. It was that my skill set was something that other people didn't have, and I don't have theirs. And that's the whole reason that this company has 20 different jobs.
I've heard it described as there are certain things that the nature and nurture of your life have led you to be more naturally adept at. IT for us, for example. It doesn't mean that you can't learn something else, but there will be skills in your life that are easier to pick up than others. Whereas, that CFO you're working with, finances may come super simple to them and they can get to 8 out of 10 in a month or 3 months. And to get to that level, it might take you years, for example. And sometimes if there's a lot of choices in front of you, it's finding out what thrives you, what excites you, and gets you from 1 to 10 faster.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that I love about technology, and that's something that I love about my position today as the owner of an IT service company, the owner of an MSP. It's knowing that like I'm damn good at technology. I know I am. Other people have told me I am. I've proven myself. I don't need to continuously tell myself I'm not worthy, right? The imposter syndrome isn't real. It's not real. It's not real. And if you realize that, even today, like as the owner of a company, as someone that is really good at technology, I'm the first person to tell you I don't know anything. I do not know what I'm doing, and I never will, because the bar keeps changing, right? The goalpost keeps moving. I think one thing that I've always had a problem with is having too many interests, right? I love math, I love science, I love literature, I love movies, I love art, but how do you take all of those interests and drive them into something that actually makes you a functioning member of society? And for me, it's been kind of owning a small business. I get to wet my beak with marketing and creativity and designing artwork or designing my LinkedIn banner. I get to dive into accounting and finance and math. And yeah, I'm not very good at it, but if I reach out to an expert to help set me up for success, I can then take what they've implemented and just carry it forward and understand and learn what they did. And relating it back to like internal IT, it was very similar to how at an MSP, if you look at like on Reddit, our MSP versus our sysadmin, they hate each other. Don't understand why. As someone that's been in both positions multiple times, right? Not just what I'm currently doing, it's the same thing. It's the same bloody thing. You have your company, which is your team. You have your clients, which are other departments that you don't deal with. In the end, they're kind of all the same thing. In the same regard, you have to um, you have to understand what every client does. You have to learn how different departments work. In this case, how different companies work. How an accounting company is different than an architectural firm, which is different than a medical office, which is different than a this and that. In the same way, how in a internal, how HR has different needs than accounting, which has different needs than marketing. But if you take a step back from being too close to it, you can really see how there's so many similarities no matter what style company or what industry you're in. Business is business, money is money, tech is tech. How you do tiny little things might be different, but in the end, my dollar is the same as your dollar.
If someone is out there working for someone and they're ready to get out on their own, how did you know? How did you know it's time? I know you had dreams and aspirations for a while, but when did you decide now's the time for me to go out on my own?
Um, oof. I've always had the ambitions, even as a young kid, I wanted to start a business. My current company is like my third or fourth that I've started. But the catalyst really was that if you are, I see this on Reddit a lot. It's like, I don't have anything to do. I spend half of my day staring out the window. What a lot of people don't realize. And if you do find yourself having a lot of spare time, that's something I found, is that I just felt like I had too much time on my hands. Never stop refining the process. Never stop documenting the tech. If you buy a computer today, maybe start planning for replacing it in 5 years, because you're going to have to. You may as well plan for it. And the same way for yourself. That skills changed. You have been doing tech for 2 minutes or for 20 years, you have seen, and actually, I take that back. Even if you've been doing tech for 2 minutes and you are a fresh 18-year-old grad right out of high school and you don't want to go to college and you want to go into technology, guess what? The technology you see today wasn't there when you were 5 years old. TikTok was not there 10 years ago, right? And you might be really comfortable with the technology you see today, but you didn't know what the hell it was when you started out in life. And the same goes for your tech career. If you've been in this industry for 20, 30 years, the technology that you saw when you started, especially 30 years ago from today, you were dealing with a Y2K bug. The technology that we deal with in the beginning changes so rapidly that nobody should be able to say like, oh, I don't feel like there's anything I need to learn, or, oh, I feel like I know enough about this.
Yeah, technology is truly this ever learning career. If it's something that you're not in but want to be, you don't stop learning in technology. It's always something new.
Right. Absolutely. And that is, I think, one of the most important things you can do is be a lifelong learner. And if you're not a lifelong learner, I honestly would probably say reconsider your career or reconsider the thing that you think you're not a lifelong learner. Because if you say you don't like school, that's one thing. If you say you don't like learning, that's one thing. But why then do you have a home lab and are you tinkering and trying to figure out how to do weird things in Linux? Turns out you're learning, you know?
There are people that don't like formalized learning or school that are in
I didn't.
IT. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't.
Um,
I'm the kid who was president of the engineering club. And I was leading the science team, and I was 2 steps away from not graduating high school because, like, think about that. I was the smart kid. I knew what to do. I was leading an educational club, and yet my grades didn't reflect my knowledge because I hated the formalized education. Loved learning, loved education, hated school. At the same time, loved school, loved the environment, loved the idea of it, but I wasn't good at it. And I think now you have to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, and that if you are put into a bucket, understand that bucket doesn't have to define you. You just have to know how to work within that ecosystem, within that environment, so that way once you get out of the bucket, you can flourish. And if you like how things work and you like tinkering or you like doing fun things, technology might be a great place for you to be, because it's a lot of just figuring out how things are working and tinkering, and you just have to do the thing to see what happens.
I love it. You got to find the cause and effect. If we bring this back all the way to the beginning and you're talking to your 18-year-old self, what's one thing that you tell yourself at 18?
The truth, the real thing, the
The
real
tip
thing that I
the
would
tip to better
actually.
themselves. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's different than the actual thing I would tell myself if I was 18.
Invest in
Is
Bitcoin.
no, don't erase the hard drive that has your Bitcoin wallet, bro. I would not be here today. It would probably be to screw up faster, take the risk, fail harder and faster. Because I wanted to start my company 10 years ago. No, sorry. I wanted to start my company 15 years ago. I didn't. I could be 15 years into marketing into my company, an MSP now versus a year. Do I regret my path? No. And do I understand that everything I've learned on my journey has brought me to where I am today? Yes. But at the same time, I truly believe that if I just told myself when I was younger to go about figuring out what you want to do faster, stop just toying with the idea, don't be scared, just go for it, take the leap, and you will still learn valuable lessons that will help you in life. They might be different lessons, but in the end, you're probably going to learn most of the same stuff you did that I have in my real journey.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. I know we're looking forward to interviewing some people, and we'll have my
I'm excited to
episode.
interview you.
We'll see about that guy. He's a little shady, but I think we have some good episodes going up, and we'll see everyone next week.
Yeah, appreciate you all. Thanks again. See you soon.
See you guys.